When the gunshot rang out, everyone started running in panic, but the mall security guard did the exact opposite. He ran straight toward the VIP and shouted, "Get down! Active shooter in the building!" That moment, the most critical mission of his life had begun. Welcome to the last stand. Have you or your family members served in the military? Share your experiences in the comments. David Parker had been working as a security guard at Northbrook Mall for 3 years. At 45, he stood 6'1" with an athletic build. In his gray security uniform, he usually positioned himself near the main entrance, greeting visitors. Unlike other security guards, David was constantly in motion. Instead of staying at a fixed post, he continuously walked through the mall, checking every corner. His eyes never stopped moving, cataloging every detail, analyzing human behavior patterns. His coworkers chalked up this attention to detail as old cop habits. David never responded to these comments, just smiled. But the truth was far more complex. David's work style was completely different from other security guards. In the security office, while monitoring radio communications, he didn't just track mall security, he also monitored police frequencies. The first thing he did every shift was check emergency exit routes. He'd verify that fire escapes were clear, that emergency equipment was in place, going through each item systematically. And his strangest habit, when observing visitors, he'd assess their hands, pockets, and bags. He'd read body language, searching for potential threat indicators, like he was constantly on guard against some unseen danger. Jake, another security guard, had noticed this behavior. "David, you're way too paranoid, man. This is just a shopping mall." David would just say, "Old habits, Jake." Old habits. But he never explained why he stayed so alert. Tuesday, November 12th, when David arrived for his regular shift, there was unusual activity. Mall management had made a special announcement. A very important visitor was coming that afternoon. David was curious about the details, but mall manager Jim only said, "We're ramping up security measures. Stay extra sharp." At 10:00 a.m., David was monitoring security cameras when he spotted unusual vehicles in the parking lot. Black SUVs, tinted windows, antenna arrays. These weren't regular shoppers' cars. David's heart rate quickened. These images reminded him of old times. They looked very familiar. At 12:30 p.m., David was patrolling the second-floor food court when something caught his attention. A man in his 30s, dressed in dark clothing, sat alone. At first glance, he appeared normal, but David's experienced eyes picked up different details. The man was constantly watching the main entrance. He pretended to look at his phone, but his eyes kept returning to the mall's main doors. Most importantly, he hadn't ordered food, just drinking water. He'd been sitting in the same spot for 45 minutes. David keyed his radio. "Jake, got a suspicious individual in the food court. Keeping eyes on him." "Copy that, David. I'm doing extra patrols downstairs." David continued observing the man. Body language, posture, the way he scanned the area. Everything was wrong. This guy hadn't just come here to shop. At 1:45 p.m., when David returned to the security office, he noticed the tension in manager Jim's face. The man was on the phone with someone, his voice strained. "David, we need to be extra careful today. Someone very important is coming." "How important, Jim?" Jim hesitated. "Government, level important." "Can't say more than that." Alarm bells went off in David's mind. Government-level visitor meant very high security risk. This was big. "Is extra security coming?" "Yeah, special team arrives in 30 minutes. "You better be ready, David. You've got experience with this stuff." David nodded, but he had a bad feeling. That man in the food court was still on his mind. And the guy's behavior didn't look good at all. At 2:15 p.m., intense activity began at the mall's main entrance. Men in black suits started arriving. Earpieces, covert communication devices, constantly scanning eyes with professional awareness. David recognized them immediately. Secret Service agents. Leading them was Agent Morrison. David knew him well. Former partner. Morrison was surprised to see David. "David, what are you doing here?" "Working, Mike. Been mall security here for 3 years." Morrison's face showed a mixture of sadness and surprise. "David, did you end up here because of that incident?" David lowered his head. Morrison understood. Something had happened in the past. "Who's the visitor, Mike?" David asked. "Assistant Secretary of Defense. Special meeting upstairs. Very sensitive visit." David nodded. This was truly a high-level visit. For an official at this level, there could be serious security threats. "David, if you spot anything, let me know immediately. You know this business. You've got the experience." "Sure thing, Mike." "By the way, there's a suspicious guy in the food court. Been sitting in the same spot for 2 hours, hasn't eaten anything, keeps watching the main entrance." Morrison's expression immediately changed. He switched into experienced agent mode. "Show me." David and Morrison went up to the second floor together. David pointed toward the food court. He was sitting right there, but the man was gone. His table was empty. "Where'd he go?" Morrison asked sharply. David quickly scanned the area. The man had left the food court, but where he'd gone wasn't clear. This wasn't a good sign. "Let's check the security cameras," David said. Rushing to the security office, they tracked the man through the cameras. He'd gone up to the 3rd floor. Exactly where the important visitor would be holding his meeting. Morrison keyed his radio. "All units, we have a potential threat. 3rd floor, male suspect, dark clothing. Stay alert." At 3:00 p.m., the Assistant Secretary of Defense's convoy entered the mall parking lot. David and Morrison had taken position on the 3rd floor. "David, how long since you left the job?" Morrison asked. 3 years. But some things you never forget." Morrison nodded understandingly. "I know. That's why it's good having you here." The important visitor and his team entered through the mall's main entrance. The protection detail moved in perfect coordination. David was still thinking about that suspicious man. Where had he gone, and what were his intentions? As the Assistant Secretary of Defense walked toward the meeting room, David caught movement on the security cameras. The suspicious man was emerging from the fire stairs, and he had something in his hand. Metallic, long, gun-shaped. "Mike," David shouted. "East stairwell. He's armed." Morrison immediately keyed his radio. "All units, east stairwell, suspect is armed. Emergency." But it was too late. The man had appeared 20 meters from the meeting room, and he drew the pistol from his hand. Bang! When the first gunshot echoed, the mall instantly descended into chaos. People started screaming, running in all directions. Panic ruled. David's body reacted automatically. Reflexes he hadn't used since his last day 3 years ago instantly kicked in. Muscle memory came alive. "Get down. Active shooter in the building," he shouted at the top of his lungs. The Assistant Secretary of Defense and his team froze in shock. The protection agents were also caught in the initial shock, taking them several seconds to respond. But David was already in motion. His old training had kicked in. As David ran toward the important visitor, automatic protocols engaged in his mind. Move protectee to safe area. Neutralize the threat. Secure evacuation route. "Sir, stay behind me," he yelled to the assistant secretary. David pulled him toward a nearby office. There were no bulletproof walls, but at least they were out of direct line of sight. Morrison and other agents were also taking position, but David had moved much faster than them. The shooter fired his second shot. The bullet passed 12 inches from David, hitting the wall and scattering fragments everywhere. David emerged from cover and began zigzag running toward the shooter. His old training had kicked in. Close the distance. Make targeting difficult. The shooter aimed at David for his third shot, but David's movement was unpredictable, weaving left and right, constantly moving as he approached. In the final leap, David launched himself at the shooter. Both men tumbled to the ground together. The gun slipped from the shooter's grip under David's forceful intervention and skittered away. "Don't move," David shouted, pinning the man down and immobilizing him. He twisted the man's arm behind his back and applied pressure to the neck area, bringing him under complete control. When Morrison and the other agents reached them, David had the situation totally under control. David Parker, retired Secret Service. David said, breathing hard, "Threat neutralized." Morrison's face showed both amazement and pride. He'd seen how professional his old partner still was. "Copy that, Agent Parker." As the shooter was taken into custody, Morrison turned to David. "Whatever happened 3 years ago, David, today you saved the Assistant Secretary of Defense's life." Just did my job, Mike. No, David. You showed real heroism. 2 hours later, FBI and Homeland Security investigation teams arrived. While David was giving his statement, the Assistant Secretary of Defense came personally to thank him. Mr. Parker, I'm alive because of you. I don't know how to thank you. It was my duty, sir. I learned your retired Secret Service. Why are you working mall security? David hesitated. Personal reasons, sir. The Assistant Secretary nodded. Whatever the case, today you performed a great service for the American government. A week later, Morrison called David. David, I've got an offer. Want to come back to the Secret Service? Full reinstatement, your old rank. David thought for a long time. Finally, he decided to speak. Mike, I never told you why I left. I know, David. I've always wondered. 3 years ago, while on Presidential Protection Detail, I made a mistake. I missed a critical moment. The president wasn't hurt, but he could have been. I almost caused a major catastrophe. Morrison was surprised. What incident, David? I don't remember anything like that, because it was kept classified. But I never forgave myself. I resigned that night. David, you were a perfect agent. Everyone makes mistakes. But the cost of this mistake could have been the president's life, Mike. That responsibility was too heavy for me. What happened here today taught me something, Mike. My past mistake made me stronger. Today, I didn't hesitate, never doubted myself, because I'd learned from that mistake. Morrison listened with understanding. Maybe working at the mall wasn't an accident. Maybe I was preparing for today. So, will you come back? David smiled. I'll think about it, Mike. But I'm not living in the shadow of that mistake anymore. If you enjoyed these powerful stories, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. We'll continue bringing you more hero stories every week. David Parker is back on duty with the Secret Service today, but with a different perspective, because he learned that past mistakes can make us stronger. And he still automatically checks exits, blind spots, and potential threats every time he visits a shopping mall. Always vigilant, always ready. This isn't just a motto. It's a way of life.